I'm Amelia, 32, raised in a home where being female meant preparing for marriage, not pursuing dreams. My conservative parents disowned me when I chose education over their traditional path. 12 years later, I've built a tech empire worth millions, while they let their construction business crumble. Now they've discovered my success and suddenly want to reconnect specifically with my bank account. The way I handled their demands changed our relationship forever. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my parents, leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family betrayal. Growing up in rural Nebraska shaped me in ways I'm still discovering. Our farmhouse sat on 5 acres of land with cornfields stretching to the horizon. My father Robert ran a moderately successful construction company that specialized in agricultural buildings. My mother Martha managed the household with military precision, making sure everyone knew their place in the hierarchy. And in our family, that hierarchy was crystal clear: men at the top, women at the bottom. My brothers Thomas and Michael were 3 and 5 years older than me, respectively. From the moment I could understand words, I knew they were the treasured ones. The sons who would inherit the family business, carry on the family name, and make our parents proud. Michael, the oldest, embraced this role enthusiastically. He followed Dad around the construction sites from age 10, soaking up knowledge about foundations and framework, beaming under our father's approving nods. Thomas was different, quieter, more thoughtful. He enjoyed reading and music interests my father dismissed as not practical. But even with his more sensitive nature, Thomas received opportunities I could only dream about. College funds were established for both boys. Their academic achievements were celebrated with family dinners. Their futures were mapped out with care and consideration. For me, the path was narrower. A woman's place is in the home, my mother would say, as she taught me to bake bread from scratch or mend torn clothing. Your greatest achievement will be finding a good husband and raising godly children. She'd been married at 19 and expected the same for me. I still remember the day my 3rd-grade teacher, Mrs. Wilson, called my parents for a conference. She told them I had exceptional mathematical abilities and should be placed in advanced classes. My father nodded politely during the meeting, then scoffed the entire drive home. "What good are algebra equations to a housewife?" he said. "Better she learns to balance a checkbook and manage a household budget." Despite their discouragement, my love for learning bloomed in secret corners. I read books under blankets with flashlights after bedtime. I completed extra credit assignments during lunch periods. In 5th grade, I won the county science fair with a project on water purification. My teacher was ecstatic. My parents attended the ceremony out of social obligation, their congratulations hollow. "That's nice, dear," my mother said, "but don't get too caught up in all this. Boys don't like girls who show off their smarts." By high school, the divide between my brothers and me had widened into a chasm. Michael had joined the family business full-time after minimal college education. Thomas was studying business management at the state university, preparing to handle the administrative side of the company. I was expected to date suitable boys from church, preferably those with stable incomes and traditional values. Instead, I threw myself into academics. I joined every club that would boost my college applications: debate team, math league, student government. I stayed after school to use the computer lab since we didn't have internet at home. My parents thought I was attending prayer group or home economics club. They never bothered to verify. Mrs. Campbell, my guidance counselor, became my secret ally. She saw my potential and my predicament. In her office, away from prying eyes, we researched colleges. She helped me request application fee waivers. She wrote glowing recommendation letters. She even let me use her address for correspondence, knowing my parents might intercept and destroy mail from universities. "You have a brilliant mind, Amelia," she told me. "Don't let anyone convince you it's worth less because you're female." I applied to 12 schools in secret, focusing on those with generous financial aid. I worked weekends at the local diner, saving every dollar in a bank account my parents didn't know existed. I prepared for a future they couldn't imagine for me. The acceptance letters began arriving in spring of my senior year. Mrs. Campbell would text me when one came to her house, and I'd make excuses to visit after school. I was accepted to 7 schools, but one stood out: Westridge University, with a prestigious science program and a full academic scholarship. The night I decided to tell my parents, I barely touched dinner. My stomach twisted with anxiety as I helped my mother clear the table. My father and brothers moved to the living room to watch basketball. I washed dishes, methodically rehearsing words that would change everything. When the kitchen was spotless, I took a deep breath and walked into the living room. I stood in front of the television, blocking their view of the game. My father's irritation was immediate. "Amelia, move out of the way. I need to talk to you. All of you." My mother entered from the hallway, drying her hands on a dish towel. "What is it, dear? Are you feeling unwell?" I straightened my shoulders and took out the acceptance letter I'd hidden in my pocket. "I've been accepted to Westridge University with a full scholarship. I'm going to study computer science. I leave in August." The silence that followed was like the calm before a tornado. "You're what?" My father's voice was dangerously quiet as he slowly rose from his recliner. The basketball game continued in the background, the commentator's excited voice creating a bizarre soundtrack to our family implosion. "I've been accepted to Westridge University." I repeated, my voice stronger than I felt. "It's one of the top technology programs in the country, and they're giving me a full scholarship." "And when exactly were you planning to discuss this with us?" My mother's face had paled, the dish towel clutched tightly in her hands. "I'm discussing it now," I said. "The acceptance deadline is next week. I've already decided to go." My father snatched the letter from my hand, his eyes scanning the page with growing fury. "Computer science. What kind of wife and mother will you be with a degree in computer science?" "Maybe I want more than just being someone's wife and mother," I said, the words I'd held back for years finally breaking free. "Maybe I want a career. Maybe I want to use my brain." Michael scoffed from the couch. "Listen to her. Thinks she's too good for the life Mom had." Thomas remained silent, his eyes darting between me and our parents, his expression unreadable. My father crumpled the acceptance letter in his fist. "No daughter of mine is moving across the country to fill her head with nonsense. You'll stay here, get a sensible job at the bank or the school if you must work, and meet a decent man who can take care of you." "Robert," my mother interjected, her voice taking on the placating tone she used when trying to diffuse his anger. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss," he snapped. "Amelia knows her place, and it's not at some liberal university." "It's my life," I said, trembling but determined. "I've earned this opportunity and I'm taking it." "Then you'll do it without our blessing and without our support," my father said, his voice cold. "If you walk out that door in August, you are no longer part of this family." I looked to my mother, hoping for some support, but she averted her eyes. "Your father's right, Amelia. This isn't what we raised you for. You raised me to believe I was less valuable than my brothers because I was born female," I said, tears threatening. "You raised me to shrink myself to fit someone else's expectations. I can't do that anymore." "That's enough." My father's shout made me flinch. "You have a choice to make, young lady. Your family and the proper path, or this foolish rebellion. You can't have both." I looked around at my family, my father's rage, my mother's disappointment, Michael's disdain, and Thomas's conflicted expression. In that moment, I saw my future with perfect clarity. Staying meant slowly suffocating. Leaving meant freedom, even with its unknown challenges. "I choose my education," I said quietly. "I choose my future." "Then you have until morning to pack your things," my father said. "You can stay with that guidance counselor who's been filling your head with these ideas until your university starts. I want you gone by breakfast." My mother gasped. "Robert, surely we can." "No, Martha. She's made her choice." That night was the longest of my life. I packed everything I could fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack, sobbing quietly as I folded clothes and selected which books I could take. Photos, childhood mementos, the quilt my grandmother had made for me so much would be left behind. Around midnight, there was a soft knock at my door. I opened it to find Thomas standing there, his expression solemn. "Can I come in?" he whispered. I nodded, and he entered, closing the door quietly behind him. "I want you to know," he said, "that I think you're doing the right thing. I wish I'd had your courage." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. It's not much, just $2,000 from my savings, but it might help until your scholarship money kicks in. I stared at him in shock. Thomas, I can't take this. Yes, you can, he insisted, pressing the envelope into my hand. Someone in this family should chase their dreams. Dad and Michael have mine all mapped out for me, and I was too weak to fight it. You're not weak, I said, hugging him tightly. Thank you. Just promise you'll knock them dead at that university, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Show them what an Armstrong can really do. The next morning, I carried my bags downstairs before sunrise. My father was already at the kitchen table drinking coffee and reading the newspaper as if it were any normal day. My mother stood by the stove, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Your decision stands, my father asked without looking up. Yes, I said. He nodded once. Then, as of this moment, you are no longer my daughter. Don't call, don't write, don't come back. My mother let out a small sob but said nothing. Martha, my father warned, and she turned back to the stove. I waited for something more, some crack in his resolve, some hint that this was just a tactic to scare me into compliance. There was nothing, just the rustle of his newspaper as he turned the page. Goodbye, I said, to the room, to my childhood, to the family that could not love me as I was. No one answered. I walked out the front door into the cool morning air, my entire life packed into 3 bags. Mrs. Campbell was waiting in her car at the end of our long driveway, just as we'd arranged by text the night before. As I approached, she got out and helped me load my luggage. Are you okay? She asked gently. No, I answered honestly. But I will be. 3 months later, I boarded a bus for the 12-hour journey to Westridge University. I watched the Nebraska landscape roll by, farmland giving way to small towns, then suburbs, then finally, the city where my new life would begin. I arrived at campus overwhelmed and alone. Orientation week was a blur of information sessions, campus tours, and awkward social mixers. My roommate Rebecca arrived a day after me, bursting into our dorm room with 3 suitcases and an exuberant personality. You must be Amelia, she exclaimed, dropping her bags and extending her hand. I'm Rebecca Chen, neuroscience major, coffee addict, and your new best friend, whether you want one or not. Despite my emotional exhaustion, I found myself smiling. Nice to meet you, Rebecca. That night, as we assembled our beds and unpacked our belongings, Rebecca noticed I had no family photos on my desk. No helicopter parents sending you off with embarrassing childhood pictures, she asked. No parents at all, actually, I said quietly. They disowned me when I chose college over their traditional plans for me. Rebecca stopped arranging her textbooks and looked at me with genuine compassion. Well, that's their tremendous loss and my incredible gain. Looks like I'll have to be your family now. And just like that, in a sterile dorm room with industrial carpeting and cinder block walls, I began to understand that family could be found as well as born. College was everything I'd hoped for and harder than I'd imagined. The academic challenges I welcomed, complex equations and programming languages, fed my hungry mind. The financial reality was harsher. Even with my scholarship covering tuition and basic room and board, I needed money for textbooks, a laptop, winter clothes, suitable for the northeastern climate, and countless other expenses I hadn't anticipated. I found a job at the university library, working 20 hours a week, shelving books and manning the circulation desk. On weekends, I waitressed at a diner near campus, coming home with aching feet and pockets full of tips. Between work and classes, sleep became a luxury. Rebecca watched my exhausting schedule with concern. You're going to burn out at this rate, she warned one night, finding me asleep at my desk, face pressed against my calculus textbook. I don't have a choice, I mumbled, straightening up and wiping drool from my chin. No safety net, remember? Despite the grueling schedule, I thrived academically. Programming concepts that confused my classmates came naturally to me. I found myself helping others during study groups, explaining complex algorithms with patience and clarity. My professors noticed. Miss Armstrong, Professor Margaret Winters, said after a particularly challenging exam, I'd like to speak with you about your future in computer science. Professor Winters was a legend in the department, brilliant, demanding and notoriously selective about which students she mentored. I followed her to her office, nervously perching on the edge of a chair across from her cluttered desk. "Your work shows exceptional promise," she said, adjusting her glasses. "But I understand you're working 2 jobs while maintaining a 4-point GPA. That's unsustainable." I stiffened. "With all due respect, Professor, I need those jobs to stay here." "I'm not suggesting you quit," she said. "I'm offering you a research assistant position in my lab. Fewer hours, better pay, and work that will advance your education rather than just fund it." The position changed everything. Working with Professor Winters connected me to cutting-edge research in artificial intelligence and introduced me to graduate students and industry professionals who expanded my understanding of what was possible in technology. By junior year, I had found my niche developing intuitive interfaces for complex systems. I began sketching ideas for software that could make advanced technology accessible to non-technical users. Professor Winters encouraged me to develop my concept for the university's annual business competition. "But I'm not a business student," I protested. "And that's precisely why you need to enter," she countered. "Technical brilliance without commercial application stays in academic journals. You have something that could help real people." I worked on my business plan between classes and shifts at the diner, which I'd kept for weekend income. Rebecca became my unofficial sounding board, asking the practical questions that forced me to refine my concept. "So, your software basically translates tech speak into human language?" she asked one night as I explained my project. "More than that," I said, warming to my subject. "It anticipates user needs based on behavior patterns and adapts its interface accordingly. The elderly, children, people with disabilities, anyone who finds technology intimidating would have personalized pathways to using complex systems." "You need a catchier explanation for the judges," she advised, "and a name that doesn't sound like a research paper title." She was right. I renamed my concept Bridgeware and practiced explaining it in simple terms. Technology that learns how you learn and meets you where you are. The night of the competition, I stood before 5 judges, successful entrepreneurs and investors, my hands trembling slightly as I walked them through my presentation. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before the questions began, probing but interested. 2 weeks later, I received the news I'd won first place and a $10,000 investment from the university's alumni fund. Graduation approached with mixed emotions. I'd achieved what I'd come for: academic excellence, a promising business concept, and job offers from several tech companies. But as I tried on my cap and gown in our dorm room, the absence of family struck me anew. "No one's coming to see me graduate," I said quietly to Rebecca. She looked up from packing her suitcase, her expression softening. "My parents are coming, and they're absolutely thrilled to meet my brilliant roommate, who saved my academic life more times than I can count. They already think of you as their adopted daughter from all my stories." I blinked back tears. "You told them about me?" "Of course I did. Mom's been sending those care packages for both of us, you know. The cookies with the notes. Those weren't random acts of kindness. Those were full-on mom adoption signals." On graduation day, Rebecca's parents beamed with pride for both of us, taking photos and insisting on treating us to a celebration dinner. Mrs. Chen hugged me tightly and whispered, "We are so proud of you, Amelia. Such determination deserves to be celebrated." After graduation, I faced a decision: accept a safe job with benefits or pursue my business idea full-time. The job would provide immediate security. My business might fail spectacularly. Professor Winters invited me to her home for dinner to discuss my options. Her apartment was filled with books and art, evidence of a life rich in both intellect and beauty. "What does your gut tell you?" she asked, as we sat on her balcony watching the sunset. "That I'll regret it if I don't try," I admitted. "But it's terrifying." "The best decisions usually are," she said. "And you're not without resources. You have your mind, your education, and people who believe in you." She slid a business card across the table. "Including an old friend of mine who runs a tech incubator. Tell him I sent you." I rented the cheapest apartment I could find, a studio with just enough room for a bed and a desk. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, pouring every spare dollar into developing my prototype. The alumni investment covered basic expenses for 6 months. After that, I was on my own. The tech incubator provided workspace mentoring and, most importantly, community. Other entrepreneurs shared their failures and successes, offering advice and solidarity during the inevitable setbacks. It was there I met Sarah Jenkins, a marketing specialist who immediately grasped the potential of Bridgeware. "You're solving a real problem," she said after I demonstrated my prototype. "But your marketing approach needs work. You're thinking too small." Sarah proposed a partnership, her marketing expertise for a share of the company. It meant giving up some control but gaining a teammate who complemented my technical focus with business acumen. "Deal," I said, extending my hand. "Welcome to Bridgeware." With Sarah's help, we refined our business model and began approaching potential investors. For every 20 rejections, we received one expression of interest. Slowly, painfully, we inched forward. 4 years after graduation, I had a growing company, a team of 12 employees, and the beginning of what would become financial security. I still hadn't heard from my family, though I occasionally checked Thomas's social media to see glimpses of their lives continuing without me. Sometimes I wondered if they ever did the same, watching my company's progress from afar. When I finally purchased my first home, a modest 2-bedroom condo in a safe neighborhood, I stood in the empty living room and allowed myself to feel the significance of the moment. This space was mine, earned through my own efforts, designed to support my dreams rather than confine them. As I unpacked my belongings, I came across the old envelope Thomas had given me the night before I left home. I'd kept it all these years as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, unexpected kindness can appear. I wondered where Thomas was now, if he'd found his own path, or remained trapped in our father's plans. I hoped he knew that his act of generosity had helped launch a journey that exceeded all my expectations. The path from promising startup to successful company wasn't linear. Our 6th year brought a crisis that nearly ended everything. A larger competitor launched a similar product with more features and aggressive pricing. Our main investor pulled out, concerned about our ability to compete. Within 2 months, our financial runway had shortened from a year to 8 weeks. "We need to cut costs immediately," Sarah advised during an emergency meeting in our small office, starting with office space and non-essential staff. The decisions were agonizing. We downsized to a shared workspace and let go of 3 talented developers with promises to rehire them if things turned around. I sold my car and began taking public transportation. Sarah deferred her own salary. We ate cheap takeout during late nights, revising our business plan and searching for new investment. One particularly discouraging evening, I found myself selling personal belongings online. My television, some furniture, even the nice watch I'd bought to celebrate our first profitable quarter. Sarah walked in as I was photographing items. "This isn't sustainable, Amelia," she said gently. "We need a game changer." "I know," I sighed, "but I can't give up, not after everything it took to get here." The next morning, an email arrived from a venture capitalist named Jonathan Reed. He'd seen our product demonstrated at a tech conference months earlier and was interested in discussing investment. It could be nothing, I warned Sarah, not wanting to raise false hopes. Or it could be everything, she countered. "Let's make sure we're prepared either way." We spent days refining our pitch, anticipating questions, and polishing our prototype. When we finally met Jonathan at his downtown office, I was running on caffeine and determination. "Your technology has enormous potential," he said after our presentation. "But I'm more impressed by your resilience. You've weathered a crisis that would have sunk most startups." 2 weeks later, we had a term sheet offering $2 million in exchange for 20% of the company. The investment gave us room to breathe, hire back our developers, and most importantly, complete the next generation of our product. The breakthrough came when we secured a contract with a major healthcare system to implement Bridgeware in their patient portal. Suddenly, our software was helping thousands of people navigate complex medical information. Patient satisfaction scores rose, and other healthcare providers took notice. Tech blogs began featuring our company, Bridgeware is bridging the gap between powerful technology and human needs, wrote one influential reviewer. In a world of increasingly complex systems, this is the translator we've been waiting for. We expanded rapidly, moving to proper offices and hiring specialists in healthcare, education, and financial services, all industries where complex information needed to be made accessible. Each new employee brought expertise that improved our product and opened new markets. I purchased business attire that reflected our company's growing stature, replacing the budget wardrobe that had carried me through the lean years. When a profile in technology today referred to me as a rising star in accessible technology, I cut out the article and framed it, placing it on my office wall as a reminder of how far I'd come. With success came personal complications. I briefly dated another tech entrepreneur, but the relationship faltered under the weight of our competing commitments. "You're married to your company," he said during our breakup conversation. "There's no room for anyone else." Perhaps he was right. Bridgeware had become my identity, my purpose, my family. I poured everything into its growth, working 16-hour days and weekends, celebrating each milestone and immediately setting higher goals. 7 years after founding the company, we reached our first $1 million month. I took the entire team out for a celebration dinner, watching with pride as they toasted our shared achievement. These people, brilliant, dedicated, aligned with our mission, had become my community. Rebecca remained my closest friend, now working as a neuroscience researcher across the country, but always available for late-night phone calls and twice-yearly visits. "You've built something amazing," she told me during one visit as we toured our sleek offices. "But when was the last time you took a vacation?" I laughed off her concern, but the question lingered. Success had given me financial security beyond anything I could have imagined growing up, but leisure remained a foreign concept. I was 30 years old and had never taken more than 3 consecutive days off work. The business continued its upward trajectory. We won industry awards for innovation and corporate culture. I was invited to speak at conferences, sharing our journey and advocating for accessible technology. Each public appearance terrified me. I'd been raised to be invisible, not to command attention, but I forced myself to represent our mission confidently. In our 8th year, the approach came. Tech giant, one of the largest technology companies in the world, expressed interest in acquiring Bridgeware. Their initial offer was substantial. Their revised offer after due diligence was staggering. $30 million, Sarah whispered as we sat in our lawyer's office, reviewing the final terms, plus retention bonuses if we stay on for 2 years. Should we accept? I asked, suddenly uncertain. This company had been my life's work, my redemption, my proof that I was more than my parents had believed. "That's a question only you can answer," our lawyer replied. "But from a financial perspective, this offer is exceptional." After weeks of negotiation and soul-searching, I signed the acquisition agreement. Bridgeware would continue as a division of tech giant with expanded resources to pursue our mission. I would stay on as division head, reporting to a senior vice president, but maintaining significant autonomy. The morning after the money hit my account, I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee, staring at the banking app on my phone. The number seemed unreal, more wealth than I had ever imagined possessing. I had gone from disowned daughter to self-made millionaire in 12 years. I thought about my parents' farmhouse with its peeling paint and sagging porch steps, about Thomas slipping me his savings, about all the nights I'd fallen asleep at library tables because I was working too many hours. I thought about Professor Winters taking a chance on me, about Rebecca declaring herself my family, about Sarah believing in our company when the evidence suggested we should quit. The journey had been brutal and beautiful, lonely and rich with connection. I had lost my birth family but found my people. I had been cast out but had built a home of my own making. And now I had resources that my 18-year-old self, packing her bags in tears, could never have imagined. The question was, what would I do with them? The email arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, nestled between meeting requests and industry newsletters. The subject line stopped my scrolling. "From your brother Thomas." My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. "Dear Amelia, I hope this reaches you. I've been following your success from afar and couldn't be prouder of what you've accomplished. I'm writing because things at home have changed dramatically and I think you should know. Dad's construction business has been failing for years. The economic downturn hit us hard, and frankly, neither Michael nor I had your business instincts. We're facing bankruptcy and foreclosure on the family home. More concerning, Mom has developed health problems requiring specialized treatment our insurance won't fully cover. They know about your success. Someone from town saw an article about your company's acquisition and word spread quickly. Dad pretends not to care, but I've seen him reading about you online when he thinks no one's watching. I understand if you want nothing to do with any of us after how you were treated, but I thought you deserved to know the situation. If you're open to it, I'd very much like to see you again. Your brother Thomas. I stared at the screen, emotions colliding like storm fronts. 12 years of silence and now this. Part of me wanted to delete the email and continue my life without their complications. Another part remembered Thomas's kindness on that last night and wondered what reconnection might mean. I called Rebecca immediately. My family wants back in my life, I said when she answered. Or at least my brother does. Because you're rich now? She asked, her protective instincts flaring. Partially, I think. They're in financial trouble. And how do you feel about that? I sighed, pacing my office. Conflicted, angry, curious. 12 years is a long time. You don't owe them anything, Rebecca reminded me. Not your money, not your time, not your forgiveness. I know, I said. But I think I need to at least hear what Thomas has to say. I arranged to meet Thomas at a coffee shop halfway between the city and my hometown. Neutral territory seemed safest for this first tentative reconnection. I arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance, my anxiety mounting with each passing minute. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. The lanky 23-year-old of my memory had been replaced by a man in his mid-30s with a receding hairline and tired eyes. He scanned the room, and when our gazes met, his face lit up with genuine emotion. Amelia, he said, approaching hesitantly, you look amazing. I stood unsure of the appropriate greeting after 12 years of estrangement. He solved the dilemma by pulling me into a gentle hug. Thank you for coming, he said. We ordered coffee and navigated awkward small talk, the weather, the drive, the changes to the town around us. Finally, I addressed the elephant in the room. Your email mentioned financial troubles and Mom's health issues. Thomas nodded, cupping his coffee mug with both hands. Dad overextended the business about 5 years ago, taking on projects that were too large for our capacity. When the recession hit, clients canceled contracts, and we were left with half-finished buildings and massive supply costs. Michael tried to right the ship, but he inherited Dad's stubbornness without his business experience. And Mom? Diagnosed with a heart condition last year. She needs a procedure that's only partially covered by their insurance. The specialist is out of network, and the out-of-pocket costs are substantial. I processed this information, searching Thomas's face for signs of manipulation. I found only exhaustion and worry. Why didn't you contact me sooner? I asked. It's been 12 years, Thomas. He looked down. I wanted to, many times, but Dad forbade it, and I wasn't strong enough to defy him, not like you were. He met my eyes again. I've always admired what you did, Amelia. Choosing yourself when no one else would. It wasn't easy, I said quietly. I know, and I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. He hesitated. They want to see you. Dad would never admit it, but seeing that article about your company's acquisition changed something in him. I think he's finally realized what he threw away. What exactly do they want from me? I asked, my voice sharper than intended. Honestly, financial help, but also I think a chance to make amends, in their limited way. Limited being the operative word, I said skeptically. They're still the same people, Amelia, just older and perhaps slightly humbled by circumstance. He reached across the table, stopping short of touching my hand. Will you at least consider meeting them? I'll be there. You won't face them alone. Against my better judgment, I agreed to visit the family home the following weekend. As I drove through familiar countryside, memories surfaced with each landmark: the general store, where I'd bought penny candy as a child, the church where I'd sat through countless sermons on women's submission, the high school, where teachers had recognized potential my parents dismissed. The farmhouse looked smaller than in my memory, the white paint gray with age and weather. The flower beds my mother had tended so meticulously were overrun with weeds. I parked behind Thomas's truck and sat for a moment gathering my courage. Thomas met me on the porch. "They're in the living room," he said quietly. "Dad's nervous, though he'd never admit it." I nodded, straightening my designer blazer-like armor. "Let's get this over with." Stepping into that house was like entering a time capsule. The same faded furniture, the same family photos on the walls, though I noticed my graduation portrait was conspicuously absent. My parents sat in their usual spots, my father in his recliner, my mother on the edge of the sofa. They looked up as I entered, and I was struck by how they had aged. My father's hair had gone completely white, his once imposing frame diminished. My mother seemed smaller, frailer, her hands twisted with early arthritis. "Amelia," my father said, his voice gruff. He made no move to rise. My mother stood shakily. "You look well," she said, taking a tentative step toward me. "Very professional." I accepted her awkward half-embrace, inhaling the familiar scent of her rose perfume. "Hello, Mom," I said. Then looking over her shoulder, "Dad." He nodded curtly. We sat in uncomfortable silence until Thomas brought coffee and store-bought cookies on the good china reserved for special occasions. My mother made stilted conversation about neutral topics: the weather, the drive, a cousin's new baby. My father remained largely silent, watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Your brother tells me your computer business did well for itself." "Bridgeware," I supplied. "Yes, we were acquired by tech giant last year." "Never understood all that technology nonsense," he muttered. "But seems you had a knack for it." Coming from him, this was practically effusive praise. "Where's Michael?" I asked, noticing my oldest brother's absence. My mother and father exchanged glances. "Working," my father said shortly. "Someone has to keep things afloat." Thomas shot me an apologetic look. Clearly Michael had opted out of this reunion. Another painful silence descended, broken, when my mother suddenly said, "We always believed you would do well, Amelia. You were always so smart." The revisionist history was stunning in its audacity. I bit back a harsh response, reminding myself that I was here by choice and could leave at any time. "Thomas mentioned you've been having health problems, Mom," I said instead. She touched her chest unconsciously. "Just a little heart trouble, nothing serious." "It's serious enough," my father interjected. "Needs a procedure the insurance company won't pay for. Typical corporate greed, denying coverage to hardworking Americans while paying their executives millions." The irony of his complaint about corporate greed while seeking my corporate-earned millions was not lost on me. "And the business?" I asked, turning to Thomas. "We're behind on the business loan payments," he admitted. "The bank has threatened foreclosure on this property since it was used as collateral." My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We wouldn't be in this mess if clients had honored their contracts. 12 years I built that business, provided for this family, never asked for handouts. Except now," I thought. He met my eyes directly for the first time. "I suppose Thomas has told you we're in a tight spot." "He has." "Never thought I'd see the day when." He trailed off, pride visibly wrestling with desperation. "What I mean to say is, family should help family in times of need." "Family," I repeated, the word hollow after 12 years of silence. "You've done well for yourself," he continued. "Better than any of us expected. And now you're in a position to help your mother get the medical care she needs to save your family home." "What exactly are you asking for, Dad?" I wanted him to say it plainly. He shifted again. "A loan. To cover your mother's procedure and catch up on the business payments. 300,000 would set things right." "A loan," I echoed. "With what terms, what repayment plan?" He waved a hand dismissively. "We're family, Amelia. We don't need paperwork between us." I almost laughed. "We haven't been family for 12 years by your decision. Now you want me to hand over $300,000 with no formal agreement." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Amelia, please. Your father's too proud to say it, but we need help." I looked between them, my proud, broken father, and my pleading mother. Neither had acknowledged the pain they'd caused, The years of separation, the missed milestones. Neither had offered a genuine apology. They wanted access to my resources without addressing our past. "I'll think about it," I said, finally rising from my seat. "I need time to consider." "How much time?" my father asked. "The bank won't wait forever." "Neither did I," I replied, gathering my purse. "I'll be in touch through Thomas." As I drove away, emotions churned inside me, anger at their entitlement, pity for their circumstances, and deep confusion about my own obligations. They had cast me out when I needed them most. Did I owe them rescue now that our positions were reversed? The drive back to the city passed in a blur of conflicting thoughts. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt emotionally drained but oddly clear about one thing: this wasn't just about money. It was about acknowledgement, apology, and establishing boundaries that had never existed in our family. I called Sarah first, needing her practical perspective. "My estranged family wants $300,000, I said when she answered. "Hello to you too," she replied dryly. "No small talk today, I see." I explained the situation while pacing my living room, watching evening shadows lengthen across the hardwood floors. "What does your gut tell you?" Sarah asked when I'd finished. "That giving them money without addressing the past would be enabling their behavior," I said. "But completely refusing feels vindictive when my mother needs medical care." "Those aren't your only options," Sarah pointed out. "You're thinking in absolutes because that's how your father operates. You have the power to define your own terms here." She was right. I'd escaped my father's control years ago. I didn't need to play by his rules now. The next morning I called Rebecca, who had always been my emotional compass. "I need to process this with someone who really knows me," I explained. "I've got an hour before my lab meeting," she said. "Hit me with the family drama." I recounted the tense meeting, my parents' lack of acknowledgement, and my conflicted feelings. Part of me wants to help because it's the right thing to do. Another part feels like they only see me as an ATM, not a daughter they missed. "Both things can be true," Rebecca said thoughtfully. "They probably do see you primarily as a financial resource right now, and you might still want to help for your own reasons. The question is, what would helping on your terms look like?" That afternoon I scheduled an appointment with my therapist, Dr. Marshall, who had helped me work through family issues over the years. Her office had always been a safe space to examine the complex emotions my upbringing had left me with. "What would genuine reconciliation require from your parents?" she asked after I'd explained the situation. "Acknowledgement of how they hurt me," I said immediately. "A sincere apology. Recognition that my choices were valid even if different from what they wanted." "And do you believe they're capable of that?" I considered the question seriously. My mother might be, with time. My father, I'm less confident. His pride is fundamental to his identity. "Then perhaps your expectations need to reflect that reality," Dr. Marshall suggested. "What's the minimum you need to feel this interaction honors your boundaries and self-worth?" This question stayed with me for days as I began formulating a plan. I contacted my financial advisor to discuss the logistics of potentially helping with my mother's medical expenses while protecting my own interests. Direct payment to healthcare providers would be cleanest, he advised. No money passing through their hands at all. I also reached out to a business consultant who specialized in small construction companies. "I need an objective assessment of a family business," I explained. "Is it salvageable, or should they cut their losses?" With these preparations underway, I called Michael, knowing I needed his perspective to complete the picture. The conversation was stiff and awkward. "I'm surprised you picked up," I said when he answered. "Curiosity got the better of me," he replied. "Thomas said you visited." "I did. Dad asked for a substantial loan." Michael's laugh was harsh. "Of course he did. What did you tell him?" "That I needed time to think." I paused. "I'd like your honest assessment of the business situation, Michael. Can it be saved?" His sigh carried years of frustration. "Probably not in its current form. Dad refuses to modernize or specialize. We're competing with larger companies that can underbid us while maintaining quality. But he won't listen to suggestions for change." "And you and Thomas, are you committed to continuing in construction?" "Thomas never wanted this life," Michael said, surprising me with his insight. He stayed out of obligation. Me. It's all I know. But I'm tired of fighting Dad on every decision. This conversation cemented my approach. After 2 weeks of research and reflection, I had developed a 3-part plan that addressed the practical needs while requiring accountability. I arranged another family meeting, this time bringing Sarah as moral support. The night before, I rehearsed what I would say standing before my bathroom mirror. I am not the scared 18-year-old you threw away, I told my reflection. I am a successful businesswoman who makes decisions based on data and values. I will not be manipulated or guilted. I will be fair but firm. The morning of the meeting, I dressed with care in a conservative but expensive suit that projected authority. Sarah whistled when I emerged from my bedroom. Your family won't know what hit them, she said admiringly. You look like you could buy and sell their town. I smiled tightly. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. We arrived at the farmhouse to find not just my parents and Thomas waiting, but Michael as well. He nodded curtly when I introduced Sarah as my business partner. Shall we get started? I suggested, taking a seat at the kitchen table rather than in the living room. This was a business meeting, not a social call. My father eyed Sarah suspiciously. This is family business. Sarah is here as my advisor, I said firmly. She stays. He grumbled but didn't press the issue. I've given your situation careful consideration, I began, placing a folder on the table. I've consulted financial and business experts to understand the full scope of the challenges you're facing. We don't need outsiders analyzing our private affairs, my father interrupted. You asked me for $300,000, I replied evenly. That entitles me to due diligence. My mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. Let her speak, Robert. I continued, I've developed a proposal that addresses both Mom's health needs and the business situation. I'm prepared to help, but only under specific conditions. I opened the folder and withdrew 3 documents. First, I will establish a medical trust that will pay for Mom's procedure and any related follow-up care. The payments will go directly to the healthcare providers, not to you. My mother's relief was visible. My father remained stone-faced. Second, I will hire a business consultant to evaluate the construction company thoroughly. If their assessment indicates the business can be salvaged with appropriate changes, I will consider investing in those specific changes. If not, I will provide transition funding to help you close the business in an orderly fashion and explore new opportunities. Michael leaned forward at this, clearly interested. Third, I continued, meeting my father's gaze directly. I will provide a monthly stipend to help with household expenses while these transitions occur. This stipend is conditional on all family members attending family therapy sessions twice monthly. Therapy. My father practically spat the word. We don't need some stranger telling us how to be a family. Evidently we do, I replied calmly. We haven't been a functional family in 12 years. That won't change without professional help and genuine effort from everyone. This is extortion, he growled. Holding your mother's healthcare hostage to force us into therapy. No, Dad. This is a boundary. I'm willing to help, but not to enable patterns that hurt all of us. My offer addresses your practical needs while requiring accountability and growth. And if we refuse your conditions, he challenged. Then you refuse my help, I said simply. I won't give money with no strings attached to people who haven't acknowledged the pain they caused me. Silence fell over the kitchen. My mother looked between my father and me, worry creasing her brow. Thomas studied the table. Michael watched our father with an unreadable expression. Finally, Thomas spoke. Dad, Amelia's offer is more than fair. She's trying to help in a way that actually solves problems, not just throws money at them. My father's jaw worked as he struggled with his pride. I built this business from nothing, raised this family on my own terms. Now you want me to admit I was wrong about everything. Not everything, I said, softening slightly. Just about me, about my right to choose my own path, about treating your daughter as less valuable than your son's. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We were wrong about that, Amelia. I should have stood up for you. I've regretted my silence every day since you left. This simple acknowledgement, the first genuine one I'd received, loosened something in my chest. Michael surprised me by speaking next. The business has been failing for years, Dad. We need outside perspective. Amelia's offering us a chance to either fix it or move on with dignity. That's worth swallowing some pride. My father looked around at his family, perhaps realizing for the first time that he stood alone in his resistance. His shoulders slumped slightly, the posture of a man confronting the limits of his control. "You succeeded where I failed," he said quietly, the admission clearly costing him. "Built something valuable when I couldn't keep my own business afloat." It wasn't quite an apology, but from my father it was seismic. "I was wrong about you," he continued, each word dragged reluctantly into the open, "about what you could accomplish. I am, sorry for how we parted." The words I'd waited 12 years to hear hung in the air between us. They weren't perfect, they didn't erase the past, but they were a beginning. "I accept your apology," I said, my voice steady, despite the emotion tightening my throat. "And I accept the responsibility that comes with being in a position to help. We can build something better than what we had before, but only if we're honest about the past while creating a different future." My mother reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm proud of you, Amelia. I should have told you that a long time ago." Thomas smiled, relief evident in his expression. Michael nodded, a new respect in his eyes. My father cleared his throat. "Your terms. We accept them." I slid the documents across the table. "We'll start with getting Mom the care she needs. The first therapy session is scheduled for next week." As Sarah and I drove away later, she glanced at me. "How are you feeling?" I considered the question, taking stock of the complex emotions swirling inside me. Like I've closed a circle. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to move forward on new terms. "You turned the tables without becoming like him," Sarah observed. "That's the real victory." She was right. In standing firm on my boundaries while offering genuine help, I had broken the cycle my father had established. I had found a middle path between vindictive rejection and doormat capitulation. I had honored both my success and my humanity. The real work of rebuilding our family was just beginning, but for the first time I believed it might be possible. The morning of our first family therapy session dawned clear and cool. I'd chosen a therapist specializing in family estrangement, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and had briefed her thoroughly on our history. As I parked outside her office, I spotted my parents' truck already in the lot, surprisingly punctual given my father's resistance to the whole concept. Thomas waved from the entrance, his expression a mix of anxiety and hope. "Everyone's inside," he said as I approached. "Dad's been checking his watch every 30 seconds, but he's here." That's something I acknowledged, smoothing my blouse nervously. Despite initiating this process, I felt vulnerable at the prospect of discussing our family dynamics in front of a stranger. The waiting room was tense, my mother flipping through a magazine without seeing it, my father sitting rigidly in a corner chair, Michael scrolling through his phone with studied nonchalance. No one spoke as we waited for Dr. Rodriguez to call us in. The session began awkwardly with guarded introductions and careful politeness. Dr. Rodriguez observed our interactions with keen eyes, occasionally making notes. After establishing ground rules for communication, she asked a question that cut to the heart of things. "What does family mean to each of you?" The ensuing discussion revealed how differently we each viewed our roles and responsibilities. My father spoke of provision and protection, my mother of nurturing and support. Michael valued loyalty above all, while Thomas emphasized acceptance. When my turn came, I spoke of mutual respect and the freedom to be authentic. "It seems Dr. Rodriguez noted that your definitions contain elements the others need but haven't received. Perhaps this is where healing can begin." Over the next 6 weeks, we attended therapy religiously. My father's initial resistance gradually softening as Dr. Rodriguez skillfully created space for honest communication without judgment. Parallel to these emotional discussions, practical matters progressed steadily. My mother underwent her heart procedure successfully, the medical trust functioning exactly as intended. The business consultant delivered a thorough assessment of the construction company, identifying specific areas where modernization and specialization could create a viable path forward, along with necessary leadership changes. The business could succeed, the consultant explained during a family meeting at my parents' kitchen table. but it would require a significant shift in management approach and target market. My father bristled initially at the implied criticism, but listened as the consultant outlined potential opportunities in eco-friendly agricultural construction, a growing niche with less competition and higher margins. This specialization would build on your existing expertise while opening new markets, the consultant continued, but it would require additional training certification and a different marketing approach. And different leadership, Michael added, looking pointedly at our father. Dad, you built this business, but times have changed. If we're going to evolve, I need actual decision-making authority. I expected an explosion, but therapy had begun to soften some of my father's rigid patterns. After a tense silence, he nodded curtly. You've earned the right to try, he conceded. I'll advise, but final decisions will be yours. With this breakthrough, I authorized the first phase of business investment funding, the training and certification needed for their new direction. Thomas surprised everyone by announcing he wanted to leave the construction business to pursue teaching, a dream he'd abandoned years ago. I've applied to the education program at the state university, he revealed during our fourth therapy session. At 35, I'll be the oldest student in most classes, but it's time I followed my own path. My father's acceptance of this decision, reluctant but real, marked significant progress in our family healing. When I offered to help with Thomas's tuition, it felt like closing a circle that had opened the night he'd slipped me money from his savings. 3 months into our new arrangement, we celebrated Thanksgiving together, my first holiday with my family in 12 years. I brought Rebecca as moral support, and her easy warmth helped diffuse lingering tension. As we gathered around the table, my mother reached for my hand. I never thought we'd have this again, she said softly, tears in her eyes. All my children together. After dinner, my father asked to speak with me privately. We stood on the porch watching our breath form clouds in the crisp November air. The business is turning around, he said, his gruff voice softer than usual. Michael's ideas are working. The consultant was right. I'm glad to hear that. He nodded, struggling visibly with what he wanted to say next. I was wrong about a lot of things, Amelia. Not just your education, about what makes a person valuable. He stared out at the darkened fields. I measured worth by the wrong standards, took pride in the wrong things. Coming from my father, this was profound self-reflection. We all did the best we could with what we knew at the time. I offered, not wanting to minimize his growth but acknowledging its difficulty. No, he said firmly. Your mother did her best. You kids did your best. I was stubborn and prideful, and scared of a changing world I didn't understand. He turned to face me directly. I'm sorry for what I took from you. The family support you deserved. The father you should have had. Tears pricked my eyes at this genuine apology, so different from his earlier grudging acknowledgement. Thank you for saying that. I'm not good at this, he admitted. Talking about feelings, admitting mistakes. But I'm trying to learn. For all of you. For however many years I have left. That's all any of us can ask, I said, touching his arm lightly. When spring arrived, the changes in our family had taken root like the crops in the surrounding fields. My mother's health had improved significantly. The business had secured 3 contracts in their new eco-friendly niche. Thomas had completed his first semester of education courses with excellent grades. Michael had grown more confident in his leadership role. I had established clear boundaries while opening myself to genuine connection, visiting monthly, but maintaining my independent life. During one such visit, I brought Sarah to see the business improvements her expertise had helped facilitate. You've created something remarkable here, she observed as we drove back to the city. Not just saving a business or healing a family, but modeling how accountability and generosity can coexist. It's still complicated, I admitted. There are moments when old patterns emerge and I have to resist falling into childhood responses, but it's better than I ever thought possible. By the 1-year mark of our reconciliation, we had established a new normal. The monthly stipend had been reduced as the business became self-sustaining. Family therapy continued, though less frequently. My father had stepped fully into an advisory role, finding unexpected satisfaction in mentoring younger workers rather than controlling every decision. During our final session with Dr. Rodriguez, she asked us to reflect on what we had learned. I've learned that strength comes in different forms, my father said, surprising us all by volunteering to go first. That admitting you're wrong takes more courage than insisting you're right. My mother spoke of finding her voice after decades of deference. Michael described the freedom of charting his own course with support rather than criticism. Thomas shared his joy in finally pursuing his true calling. When my turn came, I considered carefully before speaking. I've learned that turning the tables doesn't mean winning at someone else's expense. It means creating a new game entirely, one where everyone has the chance to contribute their unique strengths and receive what they truly need. As we left Dr. Rodriguez's office for the last time, my mother hugged me tightly. "You saved us," she whispered. "Not just financially, but as a family." "We saved each other," I corrected gently, "by finally being honest about who we are and what we need." That evening, as I drove back to my apartment in the city, I reflected on the journey from disowned daughter to family savior to simply being Amelia's sister-daughter, successful businesswoman, complex human being, worthy of respect and love. The pain of the past hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into wisdom that guided my choices rather than limiting them. I had discovered that true empowerment comes not from wielding power over others, but from using your strength to create possibilities where none existed before. In turning the tables on my parents, I hadn't sought revenge but renovation of our relationship, our understanding, and ultimately our capacity to grow beyond the limitations of the past. My phone rang as I pulled into my parking space. Thomas's name flashed on the screen. "Just wanted to make sure you got home safely," he said when I answered. "Just arrived," I assured him. "Everything okay there?" "Better than okay. Dad's helping Michael with proposals for 2 new projects and Mom's gardening again. We're good, Amelia. Really good." As I ended the call and looked up at the stars visible between city buildings, I felt a sense of completion. The frightened girl who had left home with 2 suitcases and a broken heart had become a woman capable of healing old wounds while honoring her own journey. The fortune I'd built had changed everything, not because of the money itself, but because it had given me the strength to define reconciliation on my own terms. Some cycles are meant to be broken, some tables are meant to be turned, and sometimes the most powerful move isn't walking away or giving in, it's creating a new path where everyone can walk forward together. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have helped your family after being disowned, or would you have chosen a different path? Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family reconciliation and personal growth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes our greatest power lies not in what we achieve but in how we use our achievements to heal what was broken.